within the last 2 years, this center has created close to 25 plus patents.
Oh wow!
So that is, I would say, it's a pretty good thing. Some have been filed, some have been granted, but at least people have put up their innovation had to generate 25 plus patents there. Last 7-8 years, we would have generated close to about 60 plus patents from this center. So that is again. From innovation perspective, I would say patent focus is there. Today we have literally a top-notch, a grid edge sensing meter. That's really out of the world. That technology is coming in there. Many of the Western worlds we have started with deploying these type of technologies, which basically gives you a lot of advancements in terms of measurement, and then also in terms of managing some of these energy intelligently. So the gap and investment is we need to find a way to optimize the capital investment that has to happen in the grid. People will have to understand what AI, the capabilities of AI, and also understand the gaps that AI have. There are areas that AI cannot do. So you have to also understand what AI can't do, and then focus on those to build certain things out of that.
Ganesh, you've had a very interesting career trajectory. You've been a scientist. You've been in this particular job for the last 3 decades. Tell us about your journey and how did you sort of get into the GCC space?
Okay, so journey perspective, I have to rewind back to 1989, and my master's was sponsored by DRDO at the time. So the industry was not very evolving. There's only few options for computer science graduates. So this vision was at the time formulated by Arunachalam, and who was the scientific advisor to the Prime Minister, and then Dr. Kalam and others, to create a pool of people who can serve the country and help the country out in terms of doing fundamental research in many areas. So they started this course in '87, which is very focused on computer science, and then so I got into that stream, and as part of that, went to DRDO, and then I worked in Visakhapatnam Naval Science and Technological Lab. So that's about 5 years of I would say pure hardcore scientific research. It was very, very nice, and then by the time we had a bond for 5 years, and once the bond was done, then I was saying that okay, let me get to the mainstream industry. So then I joined HCL Hewlett Packard R&D, which later on became HCL Technologies. So for me, the R&D was always there in my DNA. So from there, I directly went into another R&D role, building products for HCL, stacks and other stuff. And then they transferred me to US to start a special product division at the time. And then around 97, I again pivoted to get into a different space, which I joined this company, which was in San Francisco Bay Area. And then they were focusing on more in terms of cutting edge technologies for, I would say, energy management. So I joined that company in 97, and I would say through several acquisitions and mergers, I'm now today part of the Landis+Gyr family. So in the last 3 decades, I would say, even though it feels like I'm there since 1997, it never felt like I'm in the same company anytime, because I keep saying that I don't have to change companies; the company changes itself. Through various acquisitions, transformations, and all this stuff. So that gave me, I would say, a lot of challenges, opportunities to look at things differently, and then also thanks to the organizations of putting trust in, giving me those opportunities, which basically helped me to explore and then learn several things and contribute to several things.
Yeah. And the GCC, sort of the entry into GCC that happened organically?
So the entry into the GCC is very funny story. Like, my boss who was heading the Americas business at the time, Prasanna Venkatesan. Uh, you know, I used to tell him, like, we had a offshore center at the time with one of the outsourcing partners. We had about 150 people, and then I was struggling to, get a lot of these things work done, and there was like a wave of attritions happening, and we couldn't establish ourselves. Sometimes we felt like they didn't have the skin in the game, So even though we had a ODC, so he said that, like, if you're complaining so much, why don't you go and, set up your own stuff? I said, are you serious? He said, like, yes, why don't you do that? So then I came to India in 2007 along with him, and then with a PowerPoint, and then we started exploring what options are there, and how it could be built up. And one led to the other, and then I probably, like, I got lucky, I should say. I got like really good people who aligned with me at the time, because like back in 2007 we didn't have a building. The building that you see here is like happened over a period of time. At the time I didn't have a building, I didn't have a HR, I didn't have facilities. And then I used to take interviews, like, back in the hotels and other places, to say that, like, hey, we are going to really build something like a true startup. If you trust in this, we can just come in and, just work on. So we didn't even have the concept of GCCs at that time. My objective was, like, build a development center, which basically will help and contribute to Landis+Gyr at that point in time. So the people who came in, they trusted that, thought process, work with me, and then they push hard, like, on all cylinders. Like, I would say I got lucky with, like, getting really some good, talented people to establish that base. And then, being a niche product company, like, you need to have a lot of effort to bring that domain and, thought process in there. So that's how the whole thing manifested. And then once we started, we were only building it only for Americas. Once they started seeing success around this, then the whole global R&D, started coagulating towards this center. And today, what we say, from here, we are supporting 3 regions, Americas, EMEA, and then Asia Pacific from here.
Wonderful. And I believe it was in 2022 when you actually moved to India from
Correct.
the US. Tell us about that shift. And there's this trend, it seems, that a lot of people who are well settled overseas, whether it's the US or Europe, and they may very well be citizens, they seem to be wanting to come back, and they are coming back and wanting to sort of build out of India. You're a part of that trend, if I may say so. Talk to us about how that shift happened and what was the sort of thinking behind it.
Correct. So 2022, again, interestingly, we were in a different crossroads. This is around COVID, post-COVID, I would say, like our tail end of COVID era. The center was going through a bit of a tough time. We had a lot of difficulty in, retaining the people. The great attrition wave was also, like, happening. So this was a time where, like, the management looked at it to say that, like, we need somebody who understands the DNA of the center and also understands the India context in terms of how things can evolve. So they was exploring, and then I was one of the candidates who basically they were looking at, and then I said, like, why not? Because for me, again, coming back to India was like, it's a good thing, because, like, when I left India in 1995, it was very different. But then 2022, India was very vibrant. There were a lot of opportunities, challenges, and also the potential of what you could do from here, was also, like, growing up. So I thought, like, okay, this is the next, I would say, probably, like, the face of the challenge that you have to work to shape this center into a different area. So I took the center when we had like close to 60+% attrition, and then started rebuilding everything together from here. And then it was a great challenge and great opportunity. Plus, on the way, they also, gave me opportunity to handle the India business. So for me, I would say probably there are only a few people who manage a capability center at the same time, like, can also manage the business.
True.
So that was also, like, I would say it's a wonderful opportunity. I thought, hey, why not?
Absolutely. Let's talk about the India GCC a little bit here, and how it's sort of contributing globally, right? And if you could sort of tell us about the innovations that are happening out of here, and we'd love for you to share some examples.
Sure, sure. So the India GCC, in terms of numbers, if you look at it, we represent close to 65% of global R&D workforce today. There are 10 major R&D centers, and this is one of the really crown jewel of research and development for Landis+Gyr. Now, from an innovation perspective, I would say there are probably even though it's a very niche product company and then very niche domain, people take time to get into this industry domain. And I can say a lot within the last 2 years. This center has created close to 25 plus patents.
Oh wow!
So that is, I would say, it's a pretty good thing. Some have been filed, some have been granted, but at least people have put up their innovation hat to generate 25 plus patents there. Last 7-8 years, we would have generated close to about 60 plus patents from this center. So that is again, from innovation perspective, I would say patent focus is there. We could do a lot more, but at least people are among the day job. In addition to that, you're trying to put your thinking hat in there.
Yeah.
On top of that, this center has the last 4 or 5 years has evolved as the AI and ML Center of Excellence for advanced test automation.
Okay.
So the people were able to put things together in a way where the embedded level, a lot of those automation has to happen, and with that, I think we are able to save a lot of man hours of effort. I don't have the numbers right on top of it, but it is significantly high. Several $1 million worth of man hours have been saved because of that. The other innovation that this center has become is because there's a lot of cost and value engineering. Over a period of time, we were able to build environment chambers, labs, and other things where we are able to bring in a lot of cost optimization, where we are able to save a lot of our money in terms of a product cost out. So it's a value innovation and value engineering. So that is also there. And then this team has also delivered certain platforms, standalone, end-to-end, complete ownership from here. So these are all the areas where the center is today focusing on innovation. Moving forward, we are also jumping into the bandwagon to see how we can take it to the next levels, where we are more market and industry focused.
Sure. So Ganesh, smart metering, advanced metering infrastructure, and grid analytics are core to what you all do, right? Mm-hmm. So where do you see the biggest technology inflection points in the grid today, and what do you think is being underinvested?
Okay, that's a great question. In fact, so the grid is a complex engine. I think if you put all the parts together, it's the largest machine that is operating today in the world. The challenge in the grid today is 2 parts to it. One is, there is a huge focus on, your distributed energy resources or renewables. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there is also a huge focus on, building, high energy data centers and then push towards electric vehicles and in many parts of the world. Some are not, some are there, but still the demand is picking up. The consumer demand plus all the other AI enablement demand is picking up. So now the grid itself was designed several decades back, and still works on some of the older systems technologies, gateways, sensors, and connection points. So you're having a system where you have huge amount of generation and huge amount of demand, but then the conduit is not ready to deliver all of that in a seamless way. Even the energy flow was done in a way it's unidirectional from generation to consumption. Now we are talking about bidirectional energy. The systems are not ready. And same time the way the energy has to move, where you keep the batteries and how do you do that. So that's also like becoming a challenge. So the whole thematic is what we are calling about like intelligent energy management. And then that intelligent energy management aspect is you cannot go and reinvest and rechange the grid overnight.
Yeah.
So you have to find applications and solutions. That's a gap today in terms of how you bring the flexibility to the grid, so that you can manage all of this with what you have, like manage the generation and demand in a seamless way. So that is one of the areas where we as Landis+Gyr is also contributing a lot. Like we are doing a lot of research in terms of how we solve this really critical grid problem, so through our products and solutions. Today we have like literally a top notch a grid edge sensing meter. That's really like out of the world. Like that technology is coming in there. Many of the Western worlds we have started deploying these type of technologies, like which basically gives you a lot of advancements in terms of measurement, and then also in terms of managing some of this energy in intelligent way. So the gap and investment is like we need to find a way to optimize the capital investment that has to happen in the grid over a period of time.
Right.
So whatever the solutions people can offer to do that, that will go a long way.
Sure. Ganesh, you've overseen software engineering, customer ops, and now global R&D, of course. So it's been a blend of tech and operations, right? What organizational shifts would you say are required to unlock innovation at scale, especially in a traditional hardware-centric industry?
That's, so hardware centric industry, like for me, I would probably there are two parts to it. I would say hardware centric and also cost commoditized. Because the unlike your standard hardware industry like iPhone market or other gadget markets, uh, this is a business to business which is very capitally regulated market. So the cost sensitivity around like what people can pay for a meter is always there. So which means like you're now trying to look at a product which is going to sit outside of the home or stay in the grid for years to come, and then perform seamlessly with less failures, less refreshes. Like in your phone you change the phone 3 4 years. You don't do that in the metering world. Like
Yeah.
it's a large undertaking. So you need to have products and sensors which basically should be having a long life, low cost, but all the smartness that you would expect from a smartphone.
Yeah.
That becomes a challenge. So that's where like I would say in a very sensitive market like the industry where we are, that's where like a lot of our thought process goes in there in terms of how we can be so niftily doing things at a crunch space, and then bringing in a lot of, I would say, like algorithms and other smartness into the product level. Edge level, typically the way industry we have, like there are three functionalities. There is a measure, there is a think, and there is a talk. So all of this has to come together in a very cost effective way. So we have like this high speed measurement and sensing circuitry that goes inside the product. Then you have like the huge levels of compute and store at like a low cost point that has to happen in an embedded way. And then you need to bring in advanced communication technologies that work seamlessly in terms of transporting all the data back. Today we have like capabilities to do all this, especially some of our meters there in the US. Like one of the product is like Revelo, which basically sensing at the line speed, the AI/ML engine within the meter can understand the patterns from there to tell like what appliance you have in the meter, and then can stream the data like any other database to the enterprise, where there can be deep learning to tie this pattern of the appliance to a particular make and a model, and come up with the energy footprint for your home on an appliance by appliance basis. So a lot of these things are happening in there. So the innovation is as the cost of the compute is coming down at a chip level, a lot of these innovations are like happening now.
Sure. Let's talk about the industry a little bit. India's emergence as a serious GCC hub. Of course, I mean, those days are gone when India was looked at as cost center, back office. There's serious innovation happening from here, just like you all are doing. As somebody who sort of sits where you do at a rather vantage point, how do you see this? How do you read this shift?
So India is one thing I would say is like talent at scale. That's basically one of the most attractive things in India. Now, in the second aspect where I see a lot of opportunities are also like you get people with the hunger and then the potential to do things differently. So that is the mix of like talent at scale and then people who are really hungry in terms of doing things, wanting to do things. That's a good mix in my opinion in terms of like how we can take it forward. Where I would say like India in the past was having gaps for like the visibility and then the knowledge of an industry. Now that gap is coming down because of like the exposure, the connectivity that you have in terms of understanding everything in there. So the kids and then the people in the industry are also like more aware of like what is going on and what is happening. So the combination of all of this is like now putting us into a very good crossroads. Like in fact, like 15 years back, nobody would have thought like India will emerge as a massive aerospace hub. So that has happened. So same thing. Today, if you look at it from an AI perspective, we are the third largest AI ecosystem, and then pretty soon, I'm sure we will leapfrog into like two on one number one position. With the type of talent that we have here. So this is all like good. I would say base to have where you can start building, not just focused only on cost, but also like focus more on outcomes, in terms of how you drive the value and based on this.
Yeah, it's interesting that you, Ganesh, mentioned that unique combination of talent plus hunger. Because as I speak to leaders, what seems to emerge is, I mean, that is something that really puts India in a unique position. Because some of these sort of career avenues, if you will, the opportunity it presents itself to really turn
Correct.
around their life and their family's life, that is sort of unmatched,
Absolutely.
I think.
Absolutely.
Right. All right. So, you spoke about talent in India, and it's obviously a big advantage for global R&D centers. What is your playbook in attracting and retaining, world-class talent?
So I mean, for us, I would say it's a mix of like what we do. That's, so especially if you look at Landis+Gyr, we are a green company. We contribute to a larger cause from sustainability, and then like how we help utilities manage energy. So the number one, we try to explain and evangelize on how we contribute back, being a good citizen in this world, and then what impact we are creating. Because today we create like 9 trillion through our solutions, 9 trillion tons of carbon emissions across the globe, which is pretty big. We talk about sustainability, but live and breathe sustainability in medicine here. So that's one thing. And then a lot of, I would say, younger generation, they are liking that message. They say, hey, we are not just working in any other company. We are also working in a company that basically contributes back to the environment, and there is a purpose. The sense of purpose is one thing, that people align to it. The second one is like, being a niche company, the product space and other things, there are a lot of challenges, that we offer. Like, so the work related, like, the problems, the challenges, their ability to like, contribute to like, solving these problems and challenges. They are all attracted to it. Like, it's not just work, but it is also, solving, some real world challenges and problems. The third thing is like, how you bring the technology mix to solve these challenges. Like, again, people are like, again, we started with the age-old technologies, but today we are on the bleeding edge of technologies. Like, we just don't talk technology, but like, as I said, we have built the AI and ML Center of Excellence for solving certain problems. So this gives opportunities for people to get their hands and feet dirty in terms of like, hey, what are the technology? A meaningful use of technology. I'm not saying that technology for the sake of technology, but a meaningful use of technology in a sustainable way to solve a real world and industry problem and then contribute back to the world. I would say this is the recipe that we follow to evangelize and try to attract talent.
Yeah. And your message, Ganesh, to young people who are interested in exploring the GCC space, how can they sort of build a career, and what do the opportunities look like for young people today?
So for young people, I would say one of the major thing that they need to understand is to deep root into an industry or a domain. The foundation has to be very strong for them to grow. Rather than surface grazing, they need to pick up one or two areas and then really become masters in those areas. Just they can. I'm not saying that they should not explore other areas, but at least get to a point where you are investing 10,000 plus hours in a particular domain area. It's not about technology. It's about the knowledge of the domain, knowledge of the industry, knowledge of the challenges and then the problems of the industry, because that will help you to unlock the potential of even if you want to start a startup. If you understand the domain and industry context and the problem context, you will be able to bring solutions into that, and then you can bring technology to solve it. Now, that's one area where people will have to focus, because the generation today is focusing more on technology. But then I would say from technology, yes, technology is an enabler, because I started 3 decades, 4 decades back with a different technology. But today I am not sticking on to those technology.
Correct.
Technology has changed. But what didn't change in the last 3 decades is the domain where I am in, the exposure I got within that domain in terms of what is happening. So that's where the younger generation has to focus. Pick one area, master it, then you can diversify.
Sure, wonderful advice. Ganesh, before we close, AI has sort of seeped into every aspect of, or is seeping into every aspect of life and work. Personally, what is it that about AI that excites you the most, and what is it that kind of worries you the most?
Okay. What excites me is I would say, the world of possibilities. We are still scratching on the surface, in my opinion. We haven't really dug deeper into this. Like last week, you would have seen, the world was shattered with the introduction of Claude. And then people are thinking that now you have the Claude Cowork is going to replace and then do the programming. The potential is huge. How you want to, again, at the end of the day, all that's said and done, AI and all this thing is a tool. Now you need to understand how you can put the tool to the use. That needs a lot of thought process around how you bring the context. Like if you go back and where I said that you need to understand the industry, understand the domain, so you need to have a basic knowledge of how to solve the problem. So AI will help you as a tool. Now you need to come up with the ways to solve the problem. And how you bring both of these things together is a deadly combination, in my opinion. And then I'm very excited that the way AI can do things is going to be immensely huge.
So you believe, Ganesh, the human layer will always sort of remain
Human
critical?
layer will remain. Human layer. See, at the end of the day, this is artificial intelligence. There are going to be road bumps and barriers in terms of compute, power, cooling. Then probably it'll evolve into, it'll hit a plateau. AI was there, for several decades now. It's not that it is there it overnight, but it was there. But what was the roadblock was the compute capabilities, and then some of the other things the technology was not readily available to solve this problem at scale. Again, what I'm saying is the technology aspect is one part of it for AI. But then the human aspect is the one which is going to take it to the next level. The human aspect will never go away, but then it will reshape and reform into different areas. Because when computers came, people were all scared, like, okay, it's going to transform the world, they are going to rule it. But then once people knew how to harness the potential of how we can use it, then their imagination opens up to the next levels. So same way, I think people are still trying to understand the capabilities of what AI can do, and then trying to harness the potential beyond how we can take it to the next levels in terms of solving real world problems at scale.
Sure.
So today what was taking probably months, years, will take maybe days and hours and minutes to solve the problem. So which means you're able to solve problems, and then you can do better things and you have
Correct.
more time at your hand.
Yeah.
So that's the exciting part of it. Now, the worrisome part for me is maybe a short-term thing until, like, there are areas potentially where, like, when AI comes in, it may create, like, certain areas of unemployment until people really look at, other opportunities. So there's always going to be a phase where, like, people will be struggling to find roles, reskill, upskill. There will be a time where they have to do all that, and without that, it will not evolve. And same thing happened in the IT industry. Like, when
Yeah.
people were all coming in from one area, they coagulated and then started picking up things and learning, and that led to the next level. So that worries me because, especially considering the number of graduates and others coming in there, if AI is going to replace some of the basic level, you know jobs, what's going to happen to the people who are coming from the college? So it's going to be a chicken and egg thing, because until I get to that, like, experience level, they may not be able to get a job. But then how do you repurpose yourself into a level, like, where you can do it? So there's going to be a short window where there's potentially, like, unemployments and other things that could, create problems. That worries me in terms of what will happen. Even though it's a shorter window, I feel like, that's a challenge that we have to look for.
And when you say like a short window, what sort of a period are you thinking?
Like, I would say 2-3 years, maybe, because once we don't know how things will shape up with
Yeah.
the whole cloud co-work framework. Everybody is trying to optimize, because you would have seen in the news that, like, the big four in India, like, had a net hire of 17 last year. These are all, like, I would say, early warning signs in terms of what is happening. So maybe, like, next half a decade, this I would say turmoil will be there in terms of how the opportunities are going to flow, because people are also confused in terms of what you should be, focusing on from an education perspective.
Yeah.
So that's also a challenge there. I keep telling the kids, like, I was in a college, like, trying to give a talk about, like, the AI impact of AI on the careers, and I told them, like, people will have to understand what AI, the capabilities of AI, and also understand the gaps that AI have. There are areas that AI cannot do. So you have to also, like, understand what AI can't do, and then focus on those to, like, build certain things out of that. So
Yeah. And humans have been resilient. They've always
they
sort
have
of
been resilient.
emerged
They will
on top.
evolve.
So
They will find ways to go through it. But always it goes through in cycles.
correct, absolutely. Love the clarity of thought, Ganesh. Thanks so much for taking the time out today. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.